So Helen is Sieroda, who's is going to talk to us about doors to be open today, and how do we incorporate and think about the inner development goals in our own inner work that we need to do in order to help create a stronger world going forward. So I really appreciate that. And as I said, she's the founder of the Wise Goose School of Coaching, which is a B Corp. And she's been experimenting with bringing the inner development goals into her coaching work and coaching certification program. And so I thought that would be really helpful for all of us. So thank you. And Helen, I'm going to turn it over to you. So
thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. It's I've been really looking forward to coming here and meeting you. So yeah. And I have fond memories of our discussions on Lambay Island, and you'd go away and be doing your blogs, and then you would come up and say, Helen, what do you think of this? And then you'd go off and you'd kind of so I'm delighted to be here. I've got a few slides to share with you, and there will be time for you to reflect together in twos or threes. I think we probably we'll see how the numbers work out. And I'll give a very brief overview of what the inner development goals are, because I think most of you you've probably come across them. So I'll keep that brief. So this isn't going to be me expounding about the nature of the inner development goals, but I will share a little bit about how we've been using them. And it's work in progress. So, you know, it's emergent. We'll see where we go with it. I think probably if I came back in a year's time, I would give a very different talk. But the reason I called it Doors to be Opened was back in May last year. I was in Stockholm. I worked in Stockholm I set up a training academy in Stockholm, worked there for 25 years, commuting. And I hadn't been back for a while. And they invited me back for a book launch. And while I was there, they said, Helen, will you do this? Will you do that? A bit of supervision, a bit of la-la. And one of the things they asked me to do was to co-host an in-person, that was fun, in-person, after all the Zooms, an in-person morning with a bunch of consultants, coaches, and psychotherapists about the inner development goals. And because the inner development goals have come out of Sweden. They've actually come out of Stockholm. So it was a bit weird that they asked me to go and talk about it. But the reason they asked me was because they knew that I was working a lot in coaching and that I work a lot with businesses and organizations and leaders. So they felt that I was ahead of the game with my work in leadership, and that it would be interesting to have my take on the IDGs. And we called that morning Doors to be Opened. So that was why I thought, well, let's just begin with that, because that kind of roots me a little bit in and I came out of that and set up an IDG hub with some colleagues here in the UK, and we're in the early stages of that. And the idea is that coaches and consultants and leaders have many opportunities to use the IDGs, that it can open doors. And I'll talk a little bit about how it can open doors.
Do you want to share your slide deck yet? Or?
I'll share it now. So I'm kind of just about to share my, so here we go. And here we go. Close that bit down. Now, will it let me to just do screen? There we are. So here we are, doors to be opened. Done that one. So the important thing for me as a B Corp is that the inner development goals link with the sustainable development goals. So they come out of the sustainable development goals, the SDGs. And I think the global goals gave us a vision and a plan for what we needed to do to have a sustainable world by 2030. And the vision is great. You know, I think they captured a lot of the essentials in this vision, 17 goals. But actually the progress, as we all know, has been disappointing. We are not set to meet targets by 2030. The change hasn't happened in the way that it needed to, and especially the change at scale with leaders, governments, businesses. You know, it's just been, it's been snail's pace. I was going to say glacial, but that probably isn't a very good metaphor. So this was the starting point for the development of the inner development goals. It was like, oh my goodness, we've got all this stuff we need to be doing. We've got these SDGs. We're not going anywhere. What's missing? What's the missing piece? And they decided that the missing piece was that the SDGs are focused on the outer development, things we need to change out there in the world, and hadn't taken into account the inner capacities, the inner qualities, the inner principles, the inner maturity that we need in order to make those things happen and to deal with the blocks and the obstacles and to harness the energy and to collaborate and communicate. So that's why it's the inner development. It's a not-for-profit. They're doing research and they do big questionnaires and they're all open source. So if you go on the Inner Development Goals website, you can get right in there and use whatever. They're very generous. Just use whatever tools, toolkits there are. And then within that, there are hubs. And as I said, I helped to form a hub in the UK with a couple of colleagues, and we're in the early days of seeing how that goes. So it's a framework, basically. And here is the framework. So these are the 5 dimensions that they, out of the research and out of a lot of thinking, a lot of leading people in the world of inner development have been part of this. Big names, people you would know. But these are the 5 dimensions. So the first is being, the relationship to self, and then thinking, critical thinking and awareness of complexity and being able to take different perspectives. Relating, this is around caring for others and the world. Collaborating, those social skills that we need, and acting to enable change. So when I first saw these, the first thing I thought was, yeah, we're already doing that in the training program. You know, you're teaching your grandmother to suck eggs here. So I just thought, well, okay. So this is stuff that we already know if we've been in the field for a while. So what does it have to bring? How could I use this? What would be useful about it? And then what I realized quite quickly was that it gives a framework for people who aren't from my world, who haven't been doing this forever. It gives them something structured and safe to hold on to as they engage with, you know, what for me feels kind of easy, to engage with this work of being, you know, and sometimes in organizations when being, you know, that's too woo-woo, we don't do being. Relationship to self, we're not going to spend time on that. So it gives them a place to think about, oh, actually, yes, we do need more self-awareness and developing presence and changing mindsets, developing a learning mindset. And yes, they all talk about integrity and authenticity, but how do you really be that? So it kind of opened up conversations around thinking for people who are maybe more empathic and find critical thinking harder. Awareness of complexity, it brings that in. Shifting perspectives, it's stuff coaches do all the time. The relating is a lovely way of thinking about appreciative inquiry and how we are connected. and to be humble and empathic and compassionate in that, bringing those qualities into places where they might not normally get space. Collaborating. I think if we are going to survive this mess that we've created, it's got to come through collaborating. We've got to let go of that sole individual leader on a white charger, that individualistic view. We need to think more of the networks that we're part of and the wider systems, and be humble enough to collaborate, co-create, and include, and especially intercultural, and especially bringing in the voices of people from other than the white Anglo-Saxon kind of worlds. So I think it opens up to other ways of seeing. And then the acting, the acting enabling change, to find the courage and the creativity, the perseverance, the will. I think of this as will energy, putting our will into action. So they're the 5 dimensions. And one of I just put this slide together quickly. I could have done this in a dozen different ways, but I just thought, I just wanted to look top layer of what I'm seeing coaches do with this, working with IDGs, bringing them into the work that they do to help clients. Number 1, to understand where the actions fall flat and to work out what to do about it. So, you have a lovely change initiative and you want a culture change, and it's not that easy. And often it's because of some overlooking one of those 5 dimensions on the framework. So you can use it as a kind of a problem-solving map. You can bring it up and you can say, okay, so you've tried this and it didn't happen. Instead of saying, oh, it was the wrong intervention, let's look, where did you not engage? And, it could have been about collaborating or relating, or maybe they didn't critically think. So you can just use it as a diagnostic tool. It helps clients to recognize and define what really matters because it's embedded in the Sustainable Development Goals. And to bring those kind of underpin it, they're the groundwater that lies behind it. In a particular context, and in the context of the wider framework of the dimensions. So, for example, as a B Corporation, every year I have to do an impact assessment and publish it. And this last year, I'm due to do another one in July. But for the current year, they really helped me think about which SDGs, which Sustainable Development Goals am I going to focus on, and how does that relate to the Inner Development Goals? How am I going to use the Inner Development Goals to deepen that work? So it helped me in my business to kind of clarify and articulate what is really important. For now, I might do a different version in July. It also gives us a chance to reconnect with our strengths. So for leaders to reconnect with the areas in those dimensions that they're good at. And, appreciative inquiry, it's always a good place to begin with strengths. And it gives a place to redefine the challenges and the gaps and the blind spots, at the same time as remaining connected with what inspires and energizes. And to kind of embed it in daily practice. So you can coach people around this using the dimensions. I think the thing that first attracted me to the IDGs was that it gave a language to speak about what matters and how to move forward. So it just gave away, it opened doors into places that wouldn't normally talk about all of these together. So I might go into places where they're really into acting and enabling change, but might totally neglect the being. And it just kind of gave a lovely, neat way of including all the things that they need to be doing. It enhances decision-making, so you can make clearer choices and better choices that are taking in all aspects of the framework. And choosing, so making decisions and then choosing the action, choosing the choices when you're at a crossroads, or when there's competing imperatives. And I'm going to talk about that more later. That last one is sort of where I want to dig in a little bit. The other thing I wanted to just say briefly is that what I've noticed in coaching and in teaching coaches how to do this is that when you dig into one area, it opens up the others. And moving between areas can open up the others. And so I think it's good to hold those dimensions as a whole system. But actually, it doesn't mean you have to tick all the boxes. It means that actually you can say, I am going to focus on thinking for this project for now, and we're going to come back to the others. But actually, that thinking will open up the others. So that's something that I kind of like about working with the IDGs. They're kind of laid out separately, but they're not separate. So I'm going to pause now, just briefly, and just see if there are any brief comments or questions that come out of what I've said so far. So anything from anybody.
Helen, this is Chris. How are you? Great presentation so far. How is the coaching world in general, maybe even the larger coaching organizations or the coaching certification organizations, are they behind the sort of the SDG goals and the inner development goals? Is there more of a global movement from the coaching side, or just individuals like you that are just aligned and excited?
At the moment in the field in the UK, I can only really speak for the field as I see it in the UK. So at the moment in the field of coaching in the UK, there's not a lot of leverage. I think we have initiatives like the Climate Coaching Alliance. So there are coaches who are engaging with these wider issues of our times. But I think there might be one or two IDG hubs around coaching, but not a lot. But then it's really early days. So
Yes.
we were early adopters, so I wouldn't expect them to get it. I mean, part of what I want to do is to kind of use Wise Thinking Partners, which is our IDG hub, to bring in more coaches and to get coaches thinking about this.
Great, yeah.
But less than I mean, it could be more.
Would hope. Yeah, when was the IDG, the Inner Development Goals, created? What year? Like how?
Oh, probably 2020. Have I got the date
Oh
down
yeah,
here? It's recent. So it's a new baby. No, I
Yeah.
haven't got the date written down here, but it is pretty recent.
Okay,
I mean, it
thanks.
was kind of incubating for about 10 years before that. In another play, in Sweden. But it was kind of, the big launch was only about 2019, 2020, something like that.
Great,
And
thank
it's
you.
grown a lot, actually, since then.
Thank you, Helen.
So any more thoughts or questions? Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen again. And I thought it would be fun just to give you a tool. I don't know how many of you in the room are coaches, but coaches usually like tools, that we like tools. So here is, oops. So can you see the sailboat here? So the sailboat is a great metaphor for one way that coaches that I've been training are using the inner development goals. And it's an image that most people get. And so you can think about the water as the context or the environment in which we're moving all the time. So the waters that carry us, and the tides are always changing and shifting. The water is made up of our homes, our relationships, work, stuff, people, place, culture, the natural world. So in coaching around the water, you're thinking about how are these elements impacting on your journey moving forward as the client with whatever the goals are that you're bringing. So it's a nice way of beginning with a big picture. It's you know, you just get to hold the water as widely as you can. And then you've got your steering wheel. I don't think you call it, I'm not a sailor, but I don't think you call it a steering wheel in sailing, do you? But anyway, it's the steering wheel. Is about what are your personal values? What is important to me? What am I wanting to change in this organization, in this community, in my life? What do I need? How do I need to steer this wheel in order to move forward well? And how can the steering wheel be unhelpful to me? How can I be steering in the old direction rather than changing direction when I need to? So this is a place where in coaching, we can really dig into working with values, working with authenticity, working with your self-awareness. So you can really just say, okay, what is it that I need and value now to move forward? And what's getting in the way? Am I steering an old course rather than a new course? Of course, the destination, that's the goals. Usually they come first in coaching. So it's like, where do I want to get to? Where do I want to reach? How will I know that I've arrived? And how does that affect the direction that I'm steering in? So they're kind of connected. The leaks I like. The leaks is like, you know, what leaks on the boat do I have to pay attention to? What could stop me or slow me down or divert me from where it is I'm wanting to get to? And how do I start to pay attention to taking care of the hull of this boat and address these leaks? So that can be the deeper work of self-development or shifting mindsets or breaking habits or forming new habits and behaviors. It can look at a leak could be my mistrust. So I'm not a collaborator and I need to work on that trust to collaborate well. A leak could be a lack of humility, a feeling that I have to do it all myself or that it's down to the individual leader. So leaks could be from any of the dimensions, really. The sails are the strengths. I mentioned strengths earlier. So what could I develop more? How could I leverage my strengths even more consciously with the help of others? The mindsets and the behaviors, ways of feeling that energize and infuse me through the rough water as a storm comes. What gives me resilience? And the compass is, you know, that inner compass, our true north, that orients us and provides a direction with respect to the environment that we're in. So what do I need to attend to on this journey? Where do I get feedback? So the compass is something that gives us feedback about where we're heading and when we're heading off course. So, and often that can be difficult to ask for if you're in a leadership role. Feeds into trust, relating, collaborating. The weather. This is where, if we're on the water, we need to think about the weather. These are the things that are unexpected, uncontrolled, unanticipated events that might affect the journey. So how do I respond to the unexpected? How can I prepare as best I can for the unexpected? What are the attitudes and behaviors and actions are necessary? What might trip me up when the weather shifts? And again, this is a really useful way of framing those conversations in coaching about when somebody goes out and tries something and then they come back and it hasn't worked. And often the tendency is to say, oh, well, that was just the wrong project, or I did it wrong, or it was a fail. And instead, you can kind of just spend a bit of time with it and say, well, hang on a minute. Let's just take this as data. Let's just take this as information. This is the weather. Let's just look at what the weather is telling us. And then there's other boats, other resources, other collaborators along the way, including our social networks as well as our work networks. What resources do I need to connect with? What about those who challenge me, who offer a more critical eye? Do I want to connect with some people who might be different from me, or listen to some different perspectives to get out of my little echo chamber, challenge myself to do that? Even people who might not approve of the direction I'm traveling in at all. Do I want to just find out more about that? And that's actually quite a big ask, but essential actually in this polarized world, to be able to listen to other points of view and see if we can engage rather than disengage. It's not to necessarily be hijacked and lose our values, but it's to be more relational in the way that we engage with other points of view. And then looking at who can help me to stay on course and remember what's truly important as I go on this journey. So this is a lovely little tool, and you can get this, you can actually download this on the IDG website. So I thought I'd give you an example of one of the resources that they share, but you can also have these slides, so you can have it if you want. So that was just a fun little tool. What I want to just spend a couple of minutes with is the creative tension, which doesn't often get talked about within the IDG hubs and hasn't really been talked about much in the meetings that I've been to. And that's that tensions can arise between the different dimensions. Do I focus on myself, or do I focus on others? Do I focus on the acting, or do I focus on the being? And I think it's important to listen to those tensions, not to try and just make a mush out of the tensions, but to see it as a creative tension and the play of paradox, because it's absolutely essential for life and growth, not just in the human world, but in the more than human world. We just need these, not to be polarizing. And we can get mystical here, just if bear with me. So I've included a quote here from The Way of Paradox, which is a book about the spiritual life. It's a tiny little book, as taught by Meister Eckhart. That's Meister Eckhart, the mystic, not Eckhart Tolle, the person who's does stuff now. And I think this is a lovely way of framing leadership and paradox that we work with in coaching. So it's to be a person means to have learned the secret and paradoxical art, to go out and yet remain within, to exert power, yet exercise restraint, to transcend and yet remain oneself, to be in movement, yet to be in total repose. And that, I think, is the challenge of working with the inner development goals with these 5 dimensions, and also with the sustainable development goals as the background, to engage with the paradox that underpins it. Often we want to avoid paradox because we want things to be clear. We want things to be one-dimensional. We want to know, this is what you're saying. But actually we need 2 wings. I think it was Rumi who said God gave us 2 wings so that we could fly. 2 different, the way of paradox. This is true and that's true. So working with paradox, also working with ambivalence between these dimensions, I think can be very fruitful. So what I would like to do now is give you time to meet and just to kind of work with what's arising for you in pairs. But first of all, I'm just going to guide you into a process for doing that. And it's adapted from some work by Gregory Kramer on insight dialogue, which you might be familiar with. So you might have come across it. It's called PRO, P-R-O, pause, relax, and open. So as you go into your breakout rooms, begin with a P, begin with a pause. Just take a breath or two before you launch in. Just pause. Say hello to your partner and take a couple of breaths and just relax, just settle down. Just let go of whatever thoughts or whatever's going on. Just be present. So just give yourself space, whatever's arising. And then the O, I'd like you to take turns then. I think we'll have about 5 minutes each, just to share what out of this presentation is, what questions, what feelings, what thoughts is this bringing up for you? Just see whatever arises. But to kind of let that drop down beyond the surface level thoughts, just let it drop down to, okay, where does this sit with me? And what am I making of it? And how do I feel about it? So just be open. So your job, you can have 5 minutes each, and you just listen to your partner. So it's not really a conversation so much as a deep listening. But as you listen, trust what emerges. So as you have a listener, you don't know what you might say, or you don't know what somebody else might say, but just trust in a response that arises in you. So you don't have to be smart. You don't have to coach them. You don't have to do anything. Hold the space. And if something arises that you want to say, just let that out. So speak the truth of your experience in the moment, out of the connection that's between you. So that's your instruction. Pro, pause, relax, open, and see how you get on with it. So I think let's do 10 minutes.
Okay, we'll break up into pairs, and if anybody gets lost and their pair doesn't show up, just come back to the large group and we'll figure it out from there. So thanks. 10 minutes for total interaction.
10 minutes total, yeah.
Okay. So maybe we'll be a threesome. Oh, there's Marianne. Are you there? Are you frozen, Marianne? Hello?
I hope you had as rich a conversation as I did with Emily. I really enjoyed that. So on the back of that sharing and the questions, have you ever done a one breath question, a one breath intervention? Shall I tell you how to do that? Because that might be fun, because it means that we can really use this time to hear quite a few voices. So I'd like to invite you to briefly voice on one breath. See, a breath takes about 30 seconds. So on one breath, what stands out for you, or what questions, or what you're leaving with? So on one breath. So if I do one breath, it would look like, I really want to hear from as many of you as possible before we finish the call. That was one breath. I will come in if you start doing multiple breaths and wag of my waggy feet. If you're a deep sea, if you're one of those free divers, you could go on for minutes, and then it's all spoiled. Then that wouldn't work. So let's just hear. Somebody pop in.
I'll just jump out. I'm Dale from Nebraska, and Julie was asking me a lot of questions, so I kind of dominated our conversation. But what I would just want to share is that I work in a lot of small rural communities, community development, developing community funds, and the interdevelopment goals really resonated with me. That seems to be where our challenges are in our success in rural communities. So.
You did loads of breaths there. You were breathing for England there.
Short breaths.
Okay, so thank you. I'm glad that you can take it and use it. So was Cynthia raising a hand there? Cynthia.
I want to hear more how the IDGs open doors. I want to hear more door opening stories.
Yeah. So let's hear from somebody else.
I was with Cindy, and our final question was the how.
To elaborate, the framework is very comprehensive and, looks, yeah, I really like it, but there are so many gaps in our ability to get people from here to there just based on the shifts that have happened in society. That was more than one breath. I'm stopping.
Thank you. Somebody else. Somebody else.
I can go. I think that internal goals increase accountability.
Yeah. Well said.
I can share briefly. I'm somebody who was drawn immediately to this interdevelopment framework when I first saw it, and I appreciated the different perspective and cynicism, perhaps, that my speaking partner shared with me.
One more.
I loved the paradox.
So in the last couple of minutes, I think the how question is the easiest to answer. So the how question is you sort of dig where you're standing. So you begin with the place that you are. So there isn't one universal how, but the how is with a framework in mind, with your skills, with your listening skills and your coaching skills. You begin with listening carefully to where the community you are, the leader you're with, and just asking open questions out of that. You can share the framework, but you don't have to. But I think the how is to begin with pro. with listening, pause, relax, open, and then respond. That's a good place to begin. You don't have to have a coaching qualification to do that. The more stories question is I don't have time for more stories right now, but there are lots of stories on the website, on the IDG website is full of people talking about what they're doing and videos and sharing case studies. There's just so much material there that if you dig into that, you will find stories. You'd be swimming in stories. So was there, did I miss a question? Something I should respond to there, do you think, Kathy? In the last minute?
In the last minute, I don't know that we can go there, but I think, sitting with really good questions is actually a beautiful thing. And I think that we don't actually need to answer all of these questions that have arisen, but we can sit with the questions and then we will start experimenting naturally as a part of it. And so it's a kind of cool thing, I think, when we don't seek answers, but keep seeking inquiry. And I wonder, like with Cindy, how could I close this gap, in my practice? It's like when you sit with a question like that, you eventually discover an answer, or an answer will be revealed.
Yeah.
So Helen, in our last 30-second breath, I want to thank you so much for coming and being willing to share this work, this framework, your wisdom and your experience with it, and sharing, your 4 decades of human development experience with us, or at least a slight little slice of it. And I'm hoping, the purpose of these calls is to, create a space where people who are asking interesting questions can come together and, share and also explore and learn. And we've definitely hit all of those today. And I want to remind you that a woman by the name of Catherine Tyler Scott, who's the principal of Chi Thoughtbridge, a consulting firm out of Indianapolis, is going to come and talk about on April 16th, the urgency of this moment, a call to leaders. Basically, what is happening at this moment in time, and what are we being called to do as leaders, change agents, and people who care about our communities. So I think it ought to be quite fun and entertaining as usual. Yes, mark your calendars. Thanks, Chris. And thank you for all coming and sharing your wisdom and your thinking and your experience. I appreciate it.
Yeah. If I send the slides, will you be able to circulate them?
Yes, that would be lovely.
And I will have, if anybody's interested in popping into one of our hub meetings, which are free, that's wisethinkingpartners.org.
Wonderful.
But I'll have that as a slide.
So send that to us, and we will also, when we send out the recording, we will also attach slides and that info.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed it. It's lovely to see you.
It's great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, everyone.